Expected to hear the application of former Public Enterprise Minister Lynne Brown for leave to cross-examine witnesses today. Now, in his testimony before the Commission last month, former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas said that he was told by Ajay Gupta that the controversial family had worked closely with a number of people, including Lynne Brown and Molefe. As a Public Enterprise Minister, Brown had a controversial tenure as she became implicated in allegations of mismanagement of Eskom and other parastatals such as Denel and Transnet that fell under her political leadership. Brown's name had been mentioned in alleged capture of the state by the Gupta family. Brown was replaced by Pravin Gordhan in a cabinet reshuffle in February by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, last week, chairperson of the State Capture Inquiry, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, dismissed Ajay and Rajesh Gupta's application to cross-examine witnesses. He said as long as the two brothers were not prepared to return to South Africa to give their version of events, he was unable to grant the application. Duduzane Zuma has been granted permission to cross-examine Mcebisi Jonas. Now, for more on the story, let's cross live to our reporter Mzwandile Mbeje, who's at Parktown covering the State of Capture inquiry for us. Mzwai, thank you very much indeed for your time. What can we expect from this application?
A very good morning to you, Blaine. We expect the legal counsel for the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Ms. Lynne Brown, to put an application so that the minister can be able to cross-examine witnesses. As you have said in your intro there, the minister was responsible for a number of state-owned enterprises like Eskom, and Eskom is quite mired in the state capture commission that is continuing. And of course, if you'd remember the terms of reference of this commission, it basically looks at the influence that individuals had over the people in government, and it goes further to also speak about the happenings in the state-owned enterprises. So given that the minister was responsible for those state-owned enterprises, so I think she felt it prudent that she may need to then clear her name, so when some of the allegations are directed at her. So that is what we will hear today when the commission resumes playing at 10 o'clock.
Mzwai, is it just her application that will be heard today? Are other implicated people going to apply for cross-examination as well?
Basically, what is happening is that once the judge takes a decision insofar as how this thing will happen, so he will then be able to indicate who else or who can be granted an opportunity to cross-examine. Because the minister, the former minister, what she basically wants is that where she is really implicated, she needs to be able to ask those people questions. And as you know, the legal commission, the lawyers for the commission also said whoever is granted the opportunity to cross-examine people must also be subjected to the same cross-examining that she would want to do to other people. Because it basically says, plain, so there are two versions out there. So once the minister is able to really test someone else's version, some people will want to test her version. So once, if she is granted, so the chances are she will also be subjected to the cross-examination as the commission requires.
We heard some interesting testimony from the banks, Mzwandile, over the past couple of days, and also they're mentioning some ANC members' names. I know the ANC has said that they don't want to give running commentary ahead of the commission, and will decide, I guess, in an appropriate time whether they should respond to these issues. Take us through some of the important salient points that you've picked up over the last couple of days.
I think what was basically happening, Blaine, you remember there was a time, I think it was in 2016, when the banks closed the accounts of the Gupta companies. And there was an outcry from certain quarters to say perhaps the banks are acting in collusion. So And then that is what perhaps necessitated a view from other people to say, let's find out what is it that informs the banks to all at once go and close these accounts. But of course, as you've heard in the past 3 days, the bank said the media reports that were persistent in terms of reporting that there were things that were not done the right way, and of course the suspicions that there could have been illegal activities, and that could put the banks really into trouble in terms of their reputation. So they needed to act. The talk about the state capture was really so widespread that anything associated with that could really lose a reputation. So that is what basically the banks were saying. So in the process of all of that, Blaine, the governing party somehow got asked by certain people to say, you are the governing party, so what are you doing? So because the closure of these banks is actually affecting a number of people, so the livelihoods, people won't be able to be paid and people will lose jobs. So what are you doing? Because you can't just stand aside and look while there are things happening. Perhaps that's why you know about some of those meetings that the ANC really would request with the banks to get an understanding as to what exactly informed that kind of a decision. And you heard that even the former Minister Zwane also met with some of the banks, particularly the Nedbank, also saying if he felt whatever they're doing was wrong, because in his words, he said government was responsible for issuing the licenses to the banks. So yes, Blaine, this has been quite wide-ranging in terms of this process and in terms of what exactly transpired. So this commission really should be able to assist in that regard, because all this kind of information that we are receiving is basically trying to paint a picture. For the longest time, people have been talking about the state capture, but we should know what exactly is the state capture, because just speaking, so it may not necessarily assist anyone. So that is what basically is happening. So once the minister gets the opportunity to then ask for leave to appeal, so will also be another step towards knowing exactly what was it that was this thing called state capture.
So we'll let you get on with your work at the Commission. Mzwandile Mbeje live for us in Parktown, Johannesburg. We thank you very much indeed for your reporting. Well, day 4.